The year is 1177 BC. If you were to look at a map of the known world, you would see a golden age of civilization. From the sun-drenched palaces of Mycenaean Greece to the massive fortifications of the Hittite Empire in Turkey, and down to the golden temples of Ramses, Egypt, the world is connected. Kings exchange letters on clay tablets, merchants trade tin and copper across the Mediterranean, and prosperity seems eternal. But in a single generation, this entire world, sophisticated, wealthy, and powerful, is wiped off the face of the earth. This is not a gradual decline. This is a sudden, violent heart attack. Palaces are burned to the bedrock. Cities are depopulated. Writing systems vanish. Art is forgotten. And in the ashes of the greatest empires history had ever seen, we find only one clue left behind by the survivors. A name whispered in terror. The Sea Peoples. They came from nowhere. They had no kingdom, no capital city, and no flag. They were a swarm. A confederation of naval raiders who appeared on the horizon like a storm front, bringing with them a level of violence that the Bronze Age had never witnessed. They did not just want to conquer, they wanted to consume. Imagine standing on the walls of a coastal city in what is now Syria. The morning is calm, the sea is flat. Then you see them. Hundreds of ships, not the heavy, slow merchant vessels you are used to, but sleek, fast warships with bird-head prows. They hit the beach with a terrifying efficiency. Men pour out of the hulls, warriors wearing horned helmets, carrying round shields and jagged bronze swords. There is no negotiation, there is no parley, there is only fire. Within hours, the city is a smoking ruin, the population is slaughtered or enslaved, and the swarm is already back on the boats, moving to the next target. To understand the sheer scale of this catastrophe, we have to look at the victims. These were not weak tribes living in mud huts. The Hittite Empire was a superpower. They had a standing army of thousands, heavy chariots that were the tanks of the ancient world, and fortifications that had stood for centuries. They were the rivals of Egypt, and yet, when the Sea Peoples arrived, the Hittite Empire didn't just lose a battle, it evaporated. The capital city, Hattusa, was burned so intensely that the stone bricks fused together. Archaeologists excavating the site found a layer of ash several feet thick. Inside that ash, they found arrowheads lodged in the walls and bodies left where they fell in the streets. It was an annihilation so complete that the Hittite language was effectively extinguished. The great kings of Anatolia, who had ruled for 500 years, were erased in a matter of months. We have the voice of the victims preserved in clay. In the ruins of the city of Ugarit, a wealthy trading hub on the coast of Syria, archaeologists found a kiln filled with clay tablets. These tablets were being baked to preserve them, but they were never taken out. The city was burned while the scribe was still working. One of the letters, known as the General's Letter, screams of desperation. It reads, "My father, behold, the enemy's ships came via the sea. My cities were burned, and they did evil things in my country. Does not my father know that all my troops and chariots are in the land of Hatti, and all my ships are in the land of Luca? Thus the country is abandoned to itself." This is the sound of the apocalypse. The king of Ugarit is begging for help, but there is no one left to answer. His armies are gone, fighting a losing war in the north. His ships are gone. He is naked before the blade. The tablet ends there. The fire took the city, and silence followed. But who were they? This question has haunted historians for 3,000 years. The Egyptians, the only civilization to survive the onslaught and leave a record, called them by various names: the Peliset, the Checker, the Shekelesh, the Denyen, and the Weshesh. On the walls of the temple at Medinet Habu, carved in deep relief, we see them. They are tall, broad-shouldered men. Unlike the Egyptians, who fought with shaved heads and light armor, the Sea Peoples are clad in strange, terrifying gear. Some wear feathered headdresses that look like mohawks. Others wear helmets adorned with the horns of bulls. They carry long, straight swords designed for hacking through bronze armor, and they fight in a loose, chaotic swarm, that overwhelms the rigid formations of the imperial armies. They were not just an army, they were a migration. The Egyptian reliefs show ox carts loaded with women and children following the warriors. This was a movement of people who had nothing left to lose. Theories abound about their origins. Some say they were refugees from Troy or the collapsing Mycenaean kingdoms of Greece. Others suggest they came from as far west as Sardinia and Sicily, driven out by famine or climate change. The truth is likely a combination of all of them. A domino effect of famine, drought, and earthquake destabilized the Mediterranean, creating a tidal wave of desperate, violent humanity that rolled east, gathering strength with every city they sacked. They were the dispossessed, turning on the civilized world with a ravenous hunger. By 1177 BC, the wave reached the gates of the final prize, Egypt. The pharaoh Ramesses III sat on the throne of a nervous empire. He had watched the lights go out across the world. He had seen the smoke rising from the north. He knew they were coming. The sea peoples had cut a path of destruction through the Levant, crushing the Canaanite city-states. And now they were marching across the Sinai and sailing into the Nile Delta. Ramesses III was not a great conqueror like his namesake, Ramesses the Great, but he was a survivor. He knew that if he met them in open battle, his chariots might be swarmed. So he prepared a trap. He would not fight them on the open sea, and he would not fight them on the open sand. He would force them into the one place where their speed and ferocity would work against them, the river mouths of the Nile. The Battle of the Delta is the first naval battle in recorded history, and it was a slaughterhouse. The reliefs at Medinet Habu depict the chaos in graphic detail. The Sea People's ships, powered by sails and oars, entered the narrow channels of the Nile, expecting an easy landing. Instead, they found the banks lined with thousands of Egyptian archers. The air turned black with arrows. The Sea Peoples were trapped. They could not maneuver. Their ships collided with one another, creating a floating traffic jam of timber and bodies. Then, the Egyptian navy attacked. The pharaoh's ships were designed for the river, low, maneuverable, and equipped with grappling hooks. The violence was intimate and horrific. The Egyptians didn't just fire arrows, they rammed the enemy vessels, capsizing them. Egyptian marines boarded the sinking ships, armed with maces and khopeshes, sickle-shaped swords designed to hook shields and slice limbs. The water of the Nile turned red. The Sea Peoples, weighed down by their armor, were dragged under the current or skewered by archers as they tried to swim to shore. Ramesses III stands on the bank in the reliefs, a giant among men, crushing the skulls of his enemies. He records his victory with brutal satisfaction. Those who reach my boundary, their seed is not. Their hearts and their souls are finished unto all eternity. As for those who came forward together on the sea, the full flame was in front of them at the river mouths, and a stockade of lances surrounded them on the shore. They were dragged, overturned, and laid low upon the beach, slain and made heaps from tail to head. Egypt survived, but the cost was catastrophic. The treasury was empty. The trade routes were broken. The empire began a slow, agonizing slide into decline, from which it would never fully recover. Ramesses III had saved his people from annihilation, but he could not save the world from the dark age that followed. The victory was a hollow one. The Sea Peoples were defeated, but they were not destroyed. The survivors of the battle were not executed. They were captured and resettled. Ironically, many of them were placed in forts along the coast of Canaan to guard the very borders they had tried to destroy. Over time, these settlers became known by a new name. The Peleset became the Philistines, the legendary enemies of the Israelites, immortalized in the Bible as the giants who fought with iron and fire. The aftermath of the Sea People's invasions is hard to overstate. It was a reset button for human history. For 300 years, the Mediterranean went dark. The art of writing was lost in Greece for centuries. The great palace economies vanished, replaced by small, isolated villages huddled on hilltops, terrified of the sea. The international trade networks that had brought tin from Afghanistan and copper from Cyprus collapsed entirely. It was a time of survival, where the memory of the Golden Age faded into myth. The Trojan War, the Odyssey, the stories of great heroes fighting monsters, These are the distant, distorted echoes of this era of chaos. The mystery of the Sea Peoples remains one of the most terrifying chapters in human history because it reminds us of how fragile civilization really is. We build our walls, we write our laws, and we believe that our systems are permanent. But the Bronze Age collapse proves that it only takes a perfect storm, a change in climate, a disruption in trade, and a migration of desperate, violent men to bring it all crashing down. The Sea Peoples were not monsters, they were us. They were the result of a system that broke, a humanity pushed to the edge of survival, turning into a force of nature that swept away the past to make way for the Iron Age. Today, if you visit the ruins of Ugarit or the burnt citadel of Hattusa, you can still see the layer of ash. It is a black scar in the earth, a physical boundary line between two worlds. Below the ash, there is art, commerce, and empire. Above the ash, there is only dirt and silence. The Sea Peoples did not leave behind monuments. They did not leave behind libraries. They left behind a warning that the line between order and chaos is thinner than a bronze blade. And once it breaks, the fire consumes everything. The ocean that once connected the world became a highway for its destruction. And for a few bloody decades in the 12th century BC, the horizon didn't bring promise. It brought the end of the world.
Subscribe to the Hidden Archives for weekly unforgettable historical education you won't find anywhere